Texas, celebrated for its boundless skies, proud heritage, and booming cities, is now the backdrop of a catastrophe few imagined and fewer were prepared for. What began as a torrential downpour became a merciless wave of destruction that rewrote lives in a matter of hours. This isn't just a flood, it's a breaking point. Entire communities in central Texas were blindsided by a wall of water that swallowed homes, highways, and history. Over 90 lives have been lost, 28 of them children. One of the worst-hit places was Camp Mystic, a cherished summer haven for girls along the Guadalupe River. In a single devastating night, 27 lives were confirmed lost and 11 others remain missing, including campers and a counselor. But beyond the water lines and rescue sirens lies a quieter crisis creeping just as fast: homelessness. The flood didn't just take lives, it ripped away the ground beneath them. Families now sleep in gymnasiums, in cars, or on borrowed couches, their past lives reduced to debris. And in a state already struggling to house its most vulnerable, this disaster threatens to shatter what little support remains. What happens when thousands lose everything overnight? What does it mean for a region that was already bending under the weight of housing insecurity? As Texas reels from the deluge, another storm is brewing, one of displacement, desperation, and deep systemic failure. What happened in central Texas wasn't just a flood, it was a meteorological ambush. In the early hours of that morning, a stalled weather system dumped between 5 and 11 inches of rain across already saturated ground. The skies didn't clear. Instead, storm cell after storm cell pounded the same narrow corridor, a rare phenomenon known as training, where storms travel the same path like boxcars on a rail line. The Guadalupe River, usually a symbol of calm and summer joy, became an unstoppable force. In just 45 minutes, the water level surged by 26 feet near the town of Hunt. Gauges were overwhelmed, roads vanished beneath torrents. By the time emergency alerts were issued, there was no time to run. The region's karst limestone terrain, with its thin soils and porous rock, was never meant to hold back a flood like this. Instead of absorbing water, the land funneled it, fast and furious, downhill into communities, camps, and neighborhoods. What began as a heavy rain became a wall of water crashing through bedrooms and bridges alike. Families woke up to alarms only to realize they were already surrounded. In many cases, it wasn't a matter of choosing to evacuate, it was already too late. For hundreds, entire lives were lost in under an hour. And not just the homes they built, but the future they believed was secure. And now, with the water gone, a new kind of devastation has set in. Long before the floodwaters carved their path through Texas, homelessness in Texas has been building for over a decade, quietly escalating in the shadows of economic growth and urban expansion. By early 2023, more than 113,000 Texans were living without stable housing on any given night. That staggering number accounts for nearly 8% of the entire homeless population nationwide, placing Texas among the top 5 states most affected. But the danger isn't just in scale, it's in trajectory. In just 3 years, the state saw a 7% jump. Over the past decade, a 22% increase, with no signs of reversal. Behind those statistics are people living in their cars, sleeping under bridges, or huddling in parks through freezing nights. Nearly half of Texas's homeless population is unsheltered, no roof, no walls, no safety net. And that figure is growing. Since 2021, the share of unsheltered individuals has risen by 6%, indicating that shelters, when available, are no longer enough. Perhaps most heartbreaking of all, children. Nearly 31,000 unaccompanied minors face homelessness in Texas every year. This surge didn't come from nowhere. A critical shortage of affordable housing, widening income gaps, and chronic underinvestment in mental health and addiction care have all collided to create a perfect storm of vulnerability. Nonprofits and service agencies are fighting back, but they've been outnumbered and outpaced for years. And now, with thousands more Texans suddenly displaced by floods, this already brittle system is being pushed to the brink. In communities like Kirkville and Hunt, entire neighborhoods were swallowed within minutes. Families climbed onto rooftops, fled through rising currents, or watched helplessly as their homes crumbled into rivers of mud. For tens of thousands, there is no home to return to. In some of these hardest-hit areas, infrastructure is gone. Foundations have been swept away. Debris covers what used to be streets. These are not just damaged homes, they are vanished communities. And without land, insurance, or savings, many victims now face a harsh truth. They are homeless, perhaps permanently. Urban centers like Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin, already teetering under pressure, are now absorbing this human tide. Shelters will be flooded, not with water, but with people. The fragile housing system will be pushed to breaking, and what little affordable housing remains will become even harder to access. This isn't just an increase in numbers, it's an intensification of need. And for those caught in this spiral, the trauma of suddenly losing everything will make recovery far more than a logistical challenge. It will be an emotional and psychological reckoning. The storm may have passed, but the true emergency is only beginning. What started as a local disaster is now reshaping the entire state. The floodwaters may have drained from rivers and fields, but their consequences are flooding Texas's economy, infrastructure, and social fabric. In just Dallas and Collin counties alone, the cost of homelessness for a single year was already staggering. That includes over $60 million in emergency medical care and another $16 million in incarceration costs. Now, multiply that burden across dozens of counties absorbing newly displaced families, and the price tag becomes unsustainable. Taxpayer dollars will be rerouted from schools, public safety, and healthcare simply to manage a crisis that could have been mitigated with better preparation and investment in housing resiliency. But the damage goes far beyond dollars. The floods themselves are expected to cause economic losses in the hundreds of millions, affecting agriculture, tourism, and small businesses, the lifeblood of local communities. Farms in the hill country have lost entire harvests. Bed and breakfasts that rely on river tourism are shuttered indefinitely. Mom-and-pop stores, already fragile from inflation and labor shortages, now face ruin. As local economies collapse, so do the jobs and housing that keep people afloat. And then, there's the hidden infrastructure failure. Over 140 bridges and culverts across central Texas have been compromised. These aren't just engineering statistics, they're lifelines. Damaged bridges delay emergency response, destroyed roadways cut off evacuation routes, and for families trying to return, rebuild, or relocate, impassable terrain becomes yet another barrier to survival. In the aftermath of chaos, something as basic as a blocked road can mean the difference between recovery and permanent homelessness. And with the water gone, a new kind of devastation has set in. The numbers reflect a massive mobilization. Over 850 people were rescued in just 36 hours, with helicopters slicing through heavy winds and first responders navigating debris-choked waters to pull survivors from rooftops and overturned vehicles. For many, these efforts meant the difference between life and death. Despite the bravery on the ground, the storm revealed critical gaps in the state's ability to anticipate and withstand disasters of this scale. The Texas legislature has since allocated $9.5 million to enhance flood alert systems, river gauge networks, and radar coverage. Vital upgrades, but ones that feel reactive rather than visionary. Meanwhile, agencies like 211 Texas, the Red Cross, and local housing authorities are scrambling to triage a crisis with tools built for smaller emergencies. The Texas General Land Office's revitalization programs, though vital, are outpaced by the sheer volume of need. The truth is harsh, but inescapable. Without long-term investment in infrastructure, equitable resource distribution, and proactive planning. These noble efforts risk becoming temporary patches on a permanent wound. Rescue is only the beginning. Recovery demands far more. Yes, the immediate priority must be to shelter the displaced, feed the hungry, and offer comfort to those who've lost everything. Emergency tents and repurposed shelters provide momentary relief, but they are not solutions. Texas must now move beyond crisis response into crisis prevention. One of the first steps is housing. The state needs to fast-track modular housing programs, expand access to rental vouchers, and convert unused public buildings into transitional residences. But housing alone is not enough. To stop temporary displacement from hardening into generational homelessness, Texas must create pathways to employment, childcare, and long-term stability. Schools across flood-impacted counties have already begun deploying grief counselors and trauma specialists, recognizing that disaster doesn't stop at the front door. It follows children into classrooms. These early interventions can become models statewide. Mental health care, often a footnote in disaster recovery, must now be brought to the forefront. The rebuilding effort must be smarter. At Camp Mystic, where dozens perished, new evacuation routes and reinforced floodplain engineering are being implemented. This shouldn't be a one-off response. It should be standard protocol across all high-risk areas: camps, trailer parks, low-income housing clusters. We must stop reacting after tragedy and start fortifying before it strikes. Meanwhile, researchers at Texas Tech University are poring over rainfall patterns, soil data, and flood trajectories. Their mission? To build better predictive models that give communities more than 20 minutes to act. But research must be paired with investment. The state needs to fund smart infrastructure, sensors, satellite data integration, AI-assisted flood mapping, not just sandbags and sirens. Economic recovery is also essential. Small businesses, the economic backbone of these communities, need direct assistance, not just loans, but grants and workforce support. Job training initiatives must target flood-impacted individuals, helping them re-enter industries or transition into growing fields. What ties this all together is a simple truth. Preparedness saves lives, and equity sustains resilience. Disasters don't hit everyone equally, and recovery must acknowledge that. The elderly woman in a mobile home, the undocumented worker in a floodplain, the child sleeping in the backseat of a car, all must be included in every phase of rebuilding. This is a moment to reject temporary fixes. It's a chance to redefine how Texas prepares, responds, and heals, not just from this flood, but from every crisis that follows. And while the road ahead will be long, every step taken with intention can turn tragedy into transformation. In every tragedy, there are moments that stay with us, not because of the destruction, but because of the courage that rose through it. Julian Ryan was a father from Ingram. As floodwaters surged around his home, he didn't hesitate. He carried his children to safety, shielding them with his own body. He was injured, bleeding, but he kept going until he couldn't. Julian didn't survive, but his children did. And in that moment, he gave the world a definition of love that no flood could ever erase. Stories like his aren't exceptions. They're reminders. Reminders that when the sirens fade and the water recedes, what's left isn't just damage, it's people. Families who lost everything, children who still wake up screaming in the middle of the night, parents who now sleep in cars, not cribs. May the souls of the departed rest in peace, and may we carry their memory not in silence, but in action. Because this isn't just a Texas crisis, it's an American story. A story about how fragile stability can be, and how quickly the dream of home can drown in the absence of preparation, compassion, and equity. In moments like this, we decide who we are. If you've made it this far, you're part of this story now too. So be the voice, be helpful, be the answer. Share this video, speak up, reach out, and don't let these lives become another flood statistic. Because somewhere tonight, someone is still waiting to be rescued.